Before I play the title track and before I get started, let me apologize for the delay and a small explanation. This month we're covering the Suicide Squad 13 and Justice League International 13, their crossover. My original plan was to have Shag, aka the Irredeemable Shag of the Fire and Water Podcast Network and Firestorm Fandom here, because he has a new podcast called the JLI Wahahaha Podcast. But apparently that restraining order he has on me is still in effect, so I couldn't get him to come over and do this. That, and he's going to be covering it with me in less than a year, so he didn't want to do double coverage so quickly. And he's a busy man, and that restraining order. So I was going to do it alone, couldn't find anyone else. Then I had Paul Hicks from over at the Waiting for Doom podcast. He was going to join me on this. But he's in Australia. I've got weird recording times. We weren't able to meet up and record. And the one day we were going to do it, my alarm didn't go off properly, so I didn't wake up early enough to record with him. So push come to shove, things happened. Unfortunately, things got going, and I wasn't able to get this recorded when I wanted to. So I started to record this episode by myself, and then Paul got a hold of me, and we was able to actually work out a time to record, so we recorded it. Like I say, it took a little bit of time. It's a little late. It's a couple weeks late. Sorry about that. But as they say, the show must go on. Speaking of the show must go on, let's get on with the show.
Hey there, true believers. Welcome to the Task Force X Headcast. A proud member of the Headcast family, I am your host, Aaron Moss, otherwise known as Head. The Task Force X Headcast follows the adventures of DC Comics' Task Force X. Task Force X was made up of the Suicide Squad comic, which was created by John Ostrander and Ryan Scott, which started in the late 1980s, and the sister comic, Checkmate, created by Paul Kupperberg and Steve Irwin. These were two sides of DC's espionage comics.
Task Force X is an off-the-books government strike team, made up of convicts with no hope for release, serving as expendable agents for impossible missions. Succeed, and I'll shave time off your sentences.
If we don't,
you'll be dead.
Exactly. I will attempt to chronicle each title and all the books that the Suicide Squad and Checkmate appeared in during this era.
We're the U.S. government. Who's going to blow the whistle on us? The convicts? Who'd believe them? You? You're going to start a blog and expose us?
Well, yeah, Amanda. A blog and a headcast.
Those scumbags are trying to screw me.
No, not at all, Amanda. I'm just trying to help everyone else discover the joy of the Suicide Squad. Anywho, hope you guys have as much fun with these comics as I did when I first read them. Oh, so many years ago.
Punk.
All right, Amanda.
bang.
And welcome to our 23rd episode of Task Force X. Today, I'm back to talk about, the Suicide Squad and Justice League International. Before we get started with the actual issue, we're going to open up with a character profile. We're going to start off on this time, then we're going to do the two issues, and then we'll end with a character profile, since the two issues go into one another. The character profile this month is for the JLI, otherwise known as Justice League International. I'm going to go ahead and read this. It's from Wikipedia, so sit back and enjoy. The Justice League International, or JLI for short, is a DC comic superhero team written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, with art by Kevin Maguire, created in 1987. Writer J.M. DeMatteis was given the Justice League title after finishing the previous Justice League of America series. Paired with writer Keith Giffen and artist Kevin Maguire, he set out to create a Big Seven title similar to the original lineup and Grant Morrison's subsequent JLA title. However, at the time, Superman was being revamped by John Byrne's reboot, while George Perez, was handling the relaunched Wonder Woman, and Mike Baron was handling his relaunch of The Flash, which was a great book in my opinion. Aquaman was off limits as well due to the character being in creative limbo for some time. According to the introduction to the trade paperback of the series, Denny O'Neil took pity on the team and gave them Batman to be used in the series. Dr. Fate's inclusion coincided with DeMatteis and Giffen writing a Dr. Fate series, another book I loved. Editor Andy Heffler, also editor of the Green Lantern at the time, suggested using the newer Guy Gardner instead of Hal Jordan. The resulting comedic tone was Giffen's idea. In terms of the industry, it served as a heavy competition compared to Marvel's comics' grim and gritty titles. The title would introduce new characterizations to old characters. Guy Gardner was now a loudish hothead. Captain Marvel was no longer a separate personality, but retains Billy's personality. Booster Gold was greedier and more inept than he had been in Dan Jurgens' series, and Black Canary's personality was written as a strong feminist. DC Comics bonus books appeared in issues 18, which was in October of 88, and number 24, and featured extra stories of JLI members by new comic creators. The Justice League International was created after the 1987 company-wide crossover and limited series Legends, which you may have heard of if you listened to the show, actually. That's what we started out with. When a new Justice League was formed and given a less America-centric mandate than before. Following the events of both Legends and Crisis on Infinite Earths, the new league also gave DC an opportunity to mix characters that represented different universes or histories prior to the mid-80s. While Batman, Martian Manhunter, and Black Canary maintained the connection to the former league, Blue Beetle was a recent acquisition from Charlton Comics, Dr. Fate was from Earth 2, Mr. Miracle was brought in from Jack Kirby's Fourth World, and Captain Marvel was previously on a separate Earth, populated by characters from Fossa Comics. Dr. Light was a new addition, making her first appearance during the Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline, while Guy Gardner served on the Legacy Hero for Green Lantern. The series would go on to become nominated as Best New Series in 98 by the Harvey Awards, but was beat out by Paul Chadwick's Concrete. It would also feature Adam Hughes' first work for a major comic publisher. The term JLI covers several different names for the series, including the first 6 issues, which were titled simply as Justice League, and the later issues when the book was renamed Justice League America without the of. Another spinoff, Justice League Europe, was renamed Justice League International, Volume 2, towards near the end of its run. In other media, Justice League International appears in Batman, the Brave and the Bold episode, entitled Darkseid Descending. Here the team consists of Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Guy Gardner, Aquaman, Martian Manhunter, Fire, and Ice. They are assembled by Batman to fight the incoming invasion of Earth by Darkseid. In a departure from the comic book origin of team, this iteration of the JLI is put together by Batman, Aquaman, and the Martian Manhunter, following an unspecified incident which led to the original Justice League disbanding. The team is also stationed in the orbiting Justice League satellite, rather than a JLI embassy in New York. The team reappeared in Shadow of the Bats, and then again in an episode entitled Time Out for Vengeance, and then again in the I'm going to mess this word up. Triumvirate of Terror, Triumvirate of Terror. And then they were joined by Captain Atom and Powerless when they had to fight Major Force in an episode entitled Crisis, 22,300 miles above the Earth. Captain Marvel and Rocket Red are shown to be on the team. And also, just as a little side note, all of the JLI's founding members have been seen teamed up with Batman before the team was created. And that's a brief history of the JLI, or the Justice League International. If you want more on the Justice League International, definitely check out their books, their comics. They've got a lot of them reprinted in trade paperbacks. And for hearing someone else talking about this series, as I mentioned previously, a buddy of mine, the Irredeemable Shag, he's got a new podcast. He started off with the Fire and Water podcast, talking about Firestorm, a character I love. Now he's got a couple of podcasts, but the newest one he's got is the JLI Bwahaha podcast. Look for it on iTunes, Stitcher, and over on the Fire and Water podcast networks. Every month, Shag looks at an issue of the series, starting at the first issue, running through the entire run, and he has a different co-host every month with him. They're up to issue, I believe, 3 or 4 right now. And so far, it's been a great podcast. It's a great series. Shag and his guests do a great job. And also, not to toot my own horn or not to, promote myself, but that's what I do. On episode 13 of his podcast, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I am going to show up and talk about actually the same crossover that I'm talking about today. So in about 10 months' time or so, look for me over on the JLI Wahaha podcast. I think I've said enough about that podcast. At some point, I'm going to have to start charging them sponsorship fees or something, or advertising. I don't know. Anyways, go check out Shag's JLI Wahaha podcast. And in the meantime, I'm going to take a quick break here. I'm going to play a promo, and I'll be right back with Justice League International number 13, the first part of the JLI Suicide Squad crossover. Hold tight, true believers.
We'll be back with much more fun. Now don't you change that channel, son.
Justice League International Bwahaha Podcast, a new monthly show chronicling the adventures of the JLI era by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis. We'll be going issue by issue in release order, tackling the core Justice League title, Justice League Europe, and the quarterly book. Along the way, we'll take time out for special episodes covering various spin-offs, cartoon appearances, the infamous TV pilot, and much more. So join me in an ever-changing roster of guest hosts as we celebrate your favorite JLI members, such as
Martian Manhunter,
Batman,
Dr. Fate,
Black Canary,
Fire,
Ice,
Maxwell Lord,
Oberon,
Captain Marvel,
Rocket Red,
Captain Atom,
Mr. Miracle,
Guy Gardner,
Booster Gold,
Blue Beetle,
Nort,
and many, many more. Justice League International Bwahaha Podcast, coming March 2016 as part of the Fire and Water Podcast Network. Want to make something of it?
Hi everybody, I'm Chad Bokelman. You may know me from the Green Lantern podcast, The Lantern Cast. You also may know me from making promises across the comics podcasting community concerning a new project I've been working on. An Action Comics Weekly podcast, to be precise. Well, it's time to deliver on that promise. The Action Comics Weekly podcast is a bi-weekly podcast featuring myself and a rotating cast of semi-regular co-hosts discussing the characters appearing in the comic series of the same name from the late 1980s. So, starting this summer, join me and Mark Marble as we discuss Green Lantern.
For all the people that want to give Hal, when he was Parallax, a lot of shit about the way he acted. Star Sapphire has nothing on Hal for being pushed over the borderline, because she's just completely friggin' nuts.
Jay Jones as we discuss Wild Dog.
He straight up, like you said, he murders these people. And that's not my DC Comics. That's not superheroic at all. Batman wouldn't have killed anybody. But this story is it's not bad. It's not great. It's like the character himself. It's like it's just there. It just exists.
Ben Avery as we discuss The Secret Six.
So when I read this alone, as I was reading through this issue, I'm thinking, what am I getting myself into? I told Chad I'd do this, but I don't know if I'm going to like this. I do end up liking Secret Six more. This is the introduction, and without this, I probably wouldn't like, the second chapter as much.
Doug Zawisza as we discuss Dead Man.
Well, it's a kind of a waffly Dead Man story. It wants to be a Dead Man story. It starts to be a Dead Man story. It forgets it's a Dead Man story. And then it comes back to being one. All in the span of 8 pages.
Alan Middleton as we discuss Black Hawk.
That there's sort of this era of Black Hawk where he was sort of dissolute and sort of couldn't get civilian life together. Mm-hmm. And I think this story is either beginning that trend or at least tapping into that fertile story.
And Michael Bailey as we discuss Superman.
There is really no way to tie this 2-page strip into that. So it really exists in its own world at a time where the Superman books were becoming more and more linked. So it's this oddity on a number of levels.
And many other characters featuring many more guest hosts along the way. The Action Comics Weekly podcast. Coming soon, summer 2016. Find us on Facebook for more details.
over, don't you know? Now it's time to watch the show.
Welcome back. I realized it was a little of a long commercial, but I wanted to play the JLI podcast. And if you're an astute listener, you may have noticed that the Rocket Red person was myself. I hope Shad got on that promo by sending him that voice clip. And the second promo was for a new podcast that's been a while in the making, the Action Comics Weekly podcast. I never really did follow the comic when it was out, just because I was new into comics relatively, and I didn't want to follow a weekly comic. I was interested in Superman, but I didn't want to follow 2 pages a week, so I skipped that one. I got them. I'm going to go back and reread them at some point. But I definitely recommend checking out the new podcast, Action Comics Weekly. Anyways, enough about other shows. Let's get back on with mine. Today, as I mentioned earlier, I have a special guest. As I said, I was going to try to get Shag to do this since he has a Just League International podcast, but with restraining order and everything, I decided not to get him this time. Hide in the guy's trash can one time and they start calling the cops on you. But since I couldn't get Shag, I decided to go out of the country.
Traveling in a fried-out combi on a hippie trailhead full of zombies. I met a strange lady, she made me nervous. She took me in and gave me breakfast. And she said, do you come from a land down under?
And from the Maryland of Oz, I pulled over Paul Hicks from the Waiting for Doom podcast. Hey there, Paul.
Hey, how you going, Aaron?
And I'm assuming Waiting for Doom, this is a Dr. Doom Fantastic Four podcast?
That's right, but we do a little line on Doom Patrol as well. So.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, we talked with Mike here a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, he's my co-host on Waiting for Doom. So, yeah, really Aussieing up the show here.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a little bit of international appeal, international flavor, Trying to get someone that sounds smarter than me on the show, so after I go out of the country and get some Australians on.
Well, you don't want to use Shag too much because he's not very used to doing podcasts, so he's a novice.
Yes, he does no podcasts at all, and it's just Shag guy. Oh, anyways, so I brought you on for a very special crossover issues. We're going to be talking about Justice League 13 and Suicide Squad 13, the crossover between the two issues.
Two great tastes that go well together, aren't they?
Very much so. So first off, let's find out a little bit about you. Why don't you tell my listeners who you are and a little bit about your, where you're from and your life in comics. And
well, as you said, I'm an Australian. My name's Paul. I got into comics. I had a mum who was pretty opposed to comics, so I didn't really get encouraged to get into them. And sort of when I left school and got my very first job straight out of school, I sort of went and checked out what was around with comics and got into DC pretty heavily. I sort of walked in and there was DC and there were Marvel, and I picked up a bunch of Marvel and I picked up a bunch of DC, and I just liked the DC much better. So I was sort of getting into comics around the, sort of 87, 86 around then, and DC were on fire back then. They were launching all these new comics out of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I took a fancy to many, many of them, and Suicide Squad was one of my very favourites from the get-go. I was there for the first issue, and that was excellent. And the other thing that really caught my eye was Justice League International. I sort of picked that one up a little bit later. I came in around issue 8, the moving day issue, which everyone loves. But I was able to get the trade pretty quickly from that. So, been doing comics ever since. So quite a few years now. And a couple of years ago, I started the Waiting for Doom podcast with Mike, and we celebrate all things Doom Patrol across the years and ages and eras and different styles and angles that they've taken on the Doom Patrol over the time. So, that's me. That's all the stuff that's interesting about me.
Well, it sounds like we got started about the same time. I started, as I've said elsewhere, I started reading comics about 87, and I really got into it late 87, 88. So. I came into Suicide Squad, as I talked about a bit later, everything a bit later, but And by the way, I hear congratulations is in order for you. I hear Doom Patrol's got a new series coming out, so that's always a good thing.
Yeah, when we started the show, there was no Doom Patrol on the horizon, which sort of influenced our name of Waiting for Doom. But now we know that on September 14, there will be a new Doom Patrol #1 on the stands by Jared Way and Nick Darrington. And so it's very exciting. And there's a lot of new Doom Patrol curious people coming around to have a look at our show at the moment, which is different and exciting. So,
well, that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Y'all definitely check out that comic when it comes out. I read the one that was going on in 87, 88 in that time frame.
Yep.
I enjoyed that one by Paul Kupperberg, and then it was later written by somebody else.
Grant Morrison came on with issue 19 after Paul Kupperberg left after Invasion. So.
Yeah, and then I read that through Paul Kupperberg, and then I think me and Mike talked about this. I stopped reading sometime after it started getting really weird.
It did get weird, yes.
And that was after Grant Morrison, so that's saying something.
Yeah.
Anyways, so let's go ahead and talk about something that we're here to talk about, the Justice League. So Justice League International 13. You have the synopsis for this one there?
I do. I'm very well organized.
Take it.
So, Justice League International number 13, which had a cover date of May 1988, but according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it came out on January 12th, 1988. 75-cent comic. Don't we wish they were still that price? Yeah. Edited by Andrew Helfer, and it was titled Collision Course. So this was, of course, written by Keith Giffen with the scripter J.M. DeMatteis, and inked by Al Gordon, lettered by Bob Lappin, and coloured by Gene D'Angelo. So, and Keith Giffen was also the penciler. So the comic opens and we see a fortress-like prison somewhere in the Soviet Union. That's what the caption says. And inside, a KGB officer escorts Tom Tresser, the DC hero known as Nemesis, back to his cell. And he coldly taunts Tresser about his upcoming execution and his trial, of course. So it's assumed that he's going to be executed after the trial, no matter what happens. And as the officer leaves, we see that Tresser's face has been come out of the Giffen shadow, and he's been beaten badly. Then, at the New York JLI embassy, Batman sits on monitor duty, listening to a news bulletin about Nemesis's capture. Nemesis's, that's fun to say, and imprisonment, and with the accusation of espionage. And Oberon offers to take Batman off monitor duty, but Batman ignores Oberon and ruminates aloud about how Tresser was a good man. And Oberon leaves him to it and warns Black Canary he's weirding out again. And then we cut to a hotel room in Washington where we see Amanda Waller is having a heated phone chat with Rick Flag. And Flag wants to mount a rescue mission, despite knowing that the Russians are trying to lure the rest of the Suicide Squad into the trap. And Waller refuses to authorize the rescue mission. And Flag speculates with Eve Arden, Nightshade, about assembling the squad for a mission against Waller's orders. And then we see that back at the JLI headquarters, Batman is thinking about it. So he's come to see, he's forming a plan. He checks in with the JLI's new Russian member, Dmitry, the Rocket Red, who's the replacement for the Rocket Red Manhunter sleeper agent who was on the team before. And Dmitry tells Batman that Tresser wouldn't be held against if he was a good man. So he must have been up to no good. And Batman sort of leaves in disgust. The next morning in Bellevue Prison, we see that Flag has assembled the squad, Deadshot, Nightshade, Javelin, Vixen, Bronze Tiger, Captain Boomerang, and Duchess, and he tells them they'll be briefed on the way about what the mission is. And they board the plane, and Flag tells Phil from the support crew that the mission is secret, so he doesn't need to know the details. As they fly off to Russia, Phil has second thoughts and contacts his boss, Economos, who in turn contacts Waller, and things explode. So Waller is furious. She quickly comes up with a solution. She gets in touch with the president, President Reagan, in the Oval Office, and goes to see him. He talks quite nostalgically about Errol Flynn and things like that, and goes off the track a fair bit, and Waller doesn't really know if he's focusing on what they're talking about. But he does agree that Waller can call in the JLI to intercept the squad to contain the situation. So, yes. And then we see the JLI have been assembled by Batman, and he's trying to get the whole team rallied to go to Russia to rescue Tresser. And he clashes with John Johns, the Martian Manhunter. The team sits back and watches the fireworks, and Guy is quite supportive of Batman because Guy has a head injury at this time and has had his personality shift where he's meek and gentle and very agreeable. Anyway, and then they get the phone call and get told that they're heading to Russia anyways, and they can't believe it. So off they fly off. Yes, and John cautions Batman about controlling the situation, and then they contact their Russian counterpart from the JLI has embassies around the world, so they contact Mr. Razmahin, and he hears that the JLI coming. He's quite concerned because Guy Gardner is with them, so he decides he'll make a few phone calls of his own. At the same time, Waller goes to see Maxwell Lord, who's recovering in hospital after being shot during the Millennium crossover. And she asks Max to stop her team, get them safely out of Russia, and above all, keep it quiet. Max protests that avoiding publicity is against everything that he stands for. But Waller threatens him, and I think they come to an agreement that, yes. Then we see that there's some Rocket Reds, and they're training in Siberia, blowing things up with their armor. And they get the call that they need to get involved in this situation, that villains are coming to Russia and heroes are coming to Russia, so they fly off. And we also see a KGB undercover agent meeting with Red Star, the hero of the Soviet Union, and saying, we need you involved. And so Red Star takes his car and drives off. Everyone is converging on the prison. We see that the JLI have arrived, and Batman is demanding to see Tressa straight away to see what's what, and getting told to back off by John, and they have a bit of a clash and an argument. Guy Gardner's in the background saying how nice the Russian flag looks and wondering who designed it. Yeah. And then there's a phone call, which Dmitri knows is going to happen because he says, Comrade Trogan, your phone. And he says, my phone? What do you? And then it rings. And then he gets told that Batman and the JLI can go and see Tressa. So Dmitri obviously did listen to Batman earlier and pulled some strings. And they arrive at the cell, and we see that on the way elsewhere in the prison there are guards sort of knocked out everywhere, and the Suicide Squad are on their way in as well. And Batman arrives at the cell and wants it open because obviously Tressa's in a bad way from being beaten. And they're having a big argument about what to do. And John is telling Batman that, you are not in charge and that is enough and you should listen to me. And the rest of the team is sort of watching as this clash unfolds, and there's a bit of a standoff. Then finally Batman backs off and listens to John. They're deciding, John says, we're going to check out the prison, see what's happening on the grounds. And Beetle looks around the corner, and they are confronted, the entire JLI are confronted by the entire Suicide Squad on their way in. And we get a beautiful splash page of the Suicide Squad there. And the comic ends, we see the Rocket Reds are still on their way, and there's Red Star's on his way, and there's troops on the way as well. So troops and helicopters. So it's all coming to a head.
Very good. Thank you very much. And did you notice here, I don't know if your copy says this, at the bottom it says continued in Suicide Squad 10?
Yeah, mistake.
It's a bit of a, I don't know if they may change plans or something, or what happened there. It was just a typo. But
just human error, I'd say.
That's what I was racking it out to. I just got wondering. But anyways, well, thank you for that coverage. It was very nice. Let's go ahead and take a look at the comic itself. So we start with the cover. What do you think about the cover of this one?
It shows the Suicide Squad facing the Reader, being attacked by the JLI who are with their backs to the Reader. So it's okay. It's not the greatest Justice League International cover, but I mean there's a reason it's there, and that's because of the next cover that's you're about to talk about in a minute. But it's workmanlike, but. It shows the JLI fighting supervillains and Bronze Tiger and Rick Flag, who aren't really supervillains at this point. It works fine. I think it's nothing spectacular, but yeah, it does show that the Suicide Squad and the JLI are fighting, which is what it says above the logo of the Justice League. So yeah, so
my feelings. I say that the background all white, kind of like I say, kind of workmanship. It just leaves it plain. And compared with the next cover, I see what they're going for, but It could have been a little better, I think. Could had maybe a little more in the background, but the characters themselves are fine.
Yeah.
I'd say nothing exceptional about them, but it gets the point across, so lets everyone know what's going on with the story. So.
It's a cover that does the job and nothing more.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that sums it up. And then move to the story itself. So the artwork in this issue, I say it's definitely a difference from their normal Just League comics.
Yeah, I'm a Giffen fan, so I quite like his pencils. I like the heavy shadows, and this is when he was developing that style that he used heavily in the 5 Years Later Legion. Where there, lots of panels on a page, lots of repeated images, everything. I mean, this is where it's sort of heading in that direction, so that the panel sizes change all over. There's a little bit of photo reference in, like, the hotel in Washington, but yeah, the character work is good. Most people have their mouths shut, I notice, when they're talking, just in the way the art depicts them. Yeah, anything stand out to you, Aaron?
Well, I say this is a different take of the artwork than what we're used to, or what they're used to in the Just League comic, but seeing how it's tying into the Suicide Squad comic, I find the artwork very reminiscent of Suicide Squad.
It's very compatible, I would say. It's
what I call more realistic.
Yeah.
Very darker, grittier. So I wonder if that's why they went this way with this, just to make it match up with the Suicide Squad more.
Yeah, and Giffen always does this thing where if someone's saying something ominous, their face is usually mostly in shadow. So there's a lot of shots where you can just see people's foreheads and then the rest of them are in shadow.
Yeah, I forgot about it. You mentioned it, but yeah, this is also very reminiscent of the Legion 5 years later. When they rebooted. So yeah, I didn't think about that at the time. I was just thinking, well, they're doing it to tie in with the Suicide Squad, but also, this is what he does pretty much when he does the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah, I don't think I liked it as much when it first came out, but I certainly, after many decades of Keith Giffen drawing this way, I quite like it. So, I've gone very used to it over the years. Yeah, but, he does, there's an economy to what he draws and how he draws it. There's lots of close-up faces, he doesn't do great big vistas.
Right.
But, you don't look at it and go, this is lazy or, this is, substandard at all. It's, I would love to be able to draw like this.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
I can't even draw a stick man. So, yeah, this is definitely, and this is by no means a stick man. This is good art. Like I say, for the Just League comic, I like the way they usually have it, the more four-color hero, if you will. But seeing how this ties into the Suicide Squad, I like the Suicide Squad's more darker, because it is a darker comic. I like the darker, the more grittier storytelling for that. So I think seeing how this is a tie-in comic, a crossover, I like the way that they kind of, if you're a Suicide Squad fan and you're picking up this book because of the crossover, it's not going to be a big jarring difference.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I thought it was very good. And again, like I said, this was the Justice League. It started off maybe not quite serious, but a little bit more serious. And then I think it was around issue 7 or 8 is when they started doing the more humorous, including more humor. So this, again, as we see on, what is this? I think it's the second page down there where Oberon's talking with Batman. I got a little dialogue to have down there, and there at the last couple of panels, he's like, "Where are we going now? Just call if you need anything. Coffee, tea, get a psychiatrist." What was that? I said, "If you're killing me, got to see a good podiatrist."
Yeah, and that joke gets reused on the next page with Flag talking to Waller on the phone.
Yeah, like I say, as far as a Suicide Squad, I don't know if the jokes go over quite as well. But seeing how this is Justice League International, I think DeMatteis, if I can get it out, and Giffen, I think they did a good job incorporating the more superhero comic and making it tie into a darker, grittier, more espionage type comic. So I thought that was a nice.
Yeah.
I say you should try to. No, I didn't dumb it down, but he brought it down to a different level.
Yeah.
But still kept what made it famous.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if this didn't have JLI on the cover, you could assume it was an issue of Suicide Squad, because the squad, the first page has Tressa in jail. The squad are on page, 3. They're all throughout it. So it's a very there's probably far less JLI in this comic than there ought to be for a comic with JLI on the cover. There really is a lot of Waller and the squad, and it meshes very well with the squad issues that come before it. So it feels like a squad issue more than a JLI issue, I would say.
Yeah, I think they're probably about 50-50, maybe a little more for squad in here. But yeah, I agree that. I'd say they did if you didn't know this was a Just League comic, it could be Suicide Squad 12B or something.
Yeah, well, I've got it in the trade, and it's quite seamless to go from 12 into this issue and then into 13 of Suicide Squad. So.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I came back, picked up these later, because I started around issue 18. It was like 18 of Just League International.
Right.
Thereabouts, and Suicide Squad I'd started around issue 20 or so.
Okay.
So I picked these up later on. I wasn't buying these off the stand, so I was curious how they read someone just picking them up.
Yep.
Glad that it was seamless. Like, it seems that way, but then again, I don't know, being a Suicide Squad fan, like I thought it worked really well tying it in with, the Suicide Squad comic.
Yep. Yeah, it sure does.
Question I have on that was at the third page with Waller talking to Rick Flag there at the bottom. Is Rick Flag trolling the telephone, or what is he doing with the telephone there on the bottom when he's trying to talk to her?
Yeah, he's got it looks like he's holding the cord at the top of the phone. So this is an old style phone, like you sort of hang up, but it looks like he's just dangling the phone in front of him, sort of at chest height. It's quite weird.
Yeah, he got his hand there to the side, kind of. It looks like it's shaking or something.
Yeah, I wonder if the phone is, you see it on the next page. It's just a regular phone on a bench, but it looks like on the first page you see it. The phone could be plugged into a holder or something. The way he's holding it.
But I just thought that was kind of weird.
It is weird.
But,
yeah.
And I do like that you mentioned that they reuse that podiatrist joke on this page also.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as the JLI issue, this one isn't filled with comedy.
Right.
That's about. But I mean, there's a lot to enjoy in the art. If you jump ahead to page 6, where the squad is assembled in the mission room.
Oh yeah.
There's like a cheeky butt shot of Nightshade.
Yeah.
With very short skirt. Yeah, and if as far as a team pick, it looks like most of the team are doing things. Like, looks like Vixen is giving a suspicious side eye to Boomerang.
As well she should.
Yeah. Javelin is there. He looks like he's fiddling with his boots. Yeah. And of course you got Duchess just standing there ready for action, which sort of sums her up. Yeah. And, Deadshot typically looks, keen as well.
Yeah.
That suicide complex he has,
Oh yeah.
itching to go on the next mission.
Ready to get out there and do some battle and face death. One thing I was noticing, back on page 4 when Rick and Nightshade are talking about, how they're going to ignore Waller's orders and do the mission anyways. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Suicide Squad, but normally Nightshade in her civilian identity is Eve Eden, who's a blonde, and she wears a wig as Nightshade. But here, she's in civilian clothes. She's in a pair of blue jeans and boots and a red sweater, it looks like. And she's got long black hair.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's... whoever did the coloring on here is not aware of that June's actually a blonde. Because usually she only has the black hair when she has Nightshades. That's one thing that stuck out at me.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just a shortcut to make it easy to identify her and not confuse people in this comic. Like if her hair was changing colour, that might be, then you've got to put more dialogue in to carry that for the reader.
And that's the other thing I got wondering, because if you're coming from the Just League International angle, you may not know who these characters are. And that is a good point that, if they got a blonde and all of a sudden she's gone, they got this brunette or this black haired girl sitting there, you might wonder, what the heck, you got to have some more dialogue.
Yeah, a bit of visual consistency just to help people through it.
But yeah, I think coming from a Suicide Squad point of view, it's kind of a bit of a... And he refers to it as Nightshade. I don't think he ever refers to it as even here. So,
Yeah.
again, I think that's just, again, shorthand for people coming from the Justice League point of view. Now that you mention that. Moving on from there, yeah, we go past Nightshade and her little butt shots.
It's weird to think, though, that this, in about, how far away? About 10 months' time, this will be on Shag's podcast, and someone else will be having a crack on it. Will you be the guest for that one?
Yes,
Eric?
actually, yeah, he's already talked to me. I'll probably be on that episode. But yeah, moving on from Nightshade. And I say you talked about Flag lying to Phil, telling him it's an undercover mission, and that what is that, page 8, I think it is? Yeah, page 8, where you've got the 3, actually it's 9 panels. You got a combo saying, he did what? And then the next line down, Amanda Waller, he did what? And then you got Reagan, he did what? Yeah, I thought that, again, more of that Justice League humor, I think. I think the way it was written came across very well.
Yeah.
Kind of crossing that Justice League International humor with the more seriousness and the not quite so blah-ha-ha humor of the Suicide Squad.
Yeah. DC at this period, they put Reagan in just about every single comic they could.
Yes.
Unless the comic was set on a distant galaxy, Reagan would usually pop up. So, yeah. And, even Nancy Reagan, I think, was a Manhunter sleeper agent in the Millennium crossover.
I'd forgotten about that, but yeah, now that you mention it, yes, I think she was a Manhunter sleeper agent, which explains a few things. But, like you say, you talked about Reagan being, reminiscing about Errol Flynn, and also like the fact that every time, he kind of messes up where, he refers to the Justice League as, what do you call them? Oh, he shows put the Justice League, JLI on it. He's like, the JLI? That Jewish organization?
Yeah. And he calls Nemesis Neurosis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I like your idea. Let's send in the JDL. JLI, sir. Just pulling your leg, my dear.
Yeah. And he mentions that Errol Flynn, he said, I don't care what anybody says, he was no Nazi. Because there was rumours around that Errol Flynn was a Nazi spy. And I think that actually influenced the character that Timothy Dalton played in The Rocketeer, because he was like a dashing movie star who was also a spy for the Nazis.
Okay.
So, there's a bit of fiction that ran with that idea. So...
Yeah,
I think it was never officially proven, and most historians agree that Errol Flynn probably wasn't. But I mean, he was a terrible womanizer, so that he wasn't the best bloke to women anyway.
Right.
But he's an Aussie actor, so we hold a special place for him in our hearts.
Of course. And he, for whatever his habits towards the women may be, or whether he was a Nazi or Nazi sympathizer, he was a good action hero for that time, so...
Yeah. Well, it's like Steve McQueen. I mean, he was a famous actor, but he was a hideous bastard to women at all times.
So, yeah, I tend to ignore people's actors' private lives, and, I mean, as long as they're a good actor, I don't let it really influence me when I watch their performance, so...
Well, in the pre-internet age, you didn't know these things.
Yeah.
Like, stars were stars. You didn't know what they would, you didn't know if they were beating women or anything. You didn't know what they're up to. That was before TMZ and, everything we have now.
And everything being photographed, recorded, or...
Yeah.
Simpler time.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I do like, and like I said, as I've commented all the time, I love this version of Amanda Waller. She's very much the hard nose, take no from anybody.
Yeah, it's the skinny version of Amanda Waller that you've seen in the New 52. It is just not the same person. It doesn't work. It doesn't have the physical presence and the just the concept that she is a woman who's got there by sheer force of will and has overcome every all these obstacles in her life. We've seen that over and over again in the Suicide Squad series that, she was just an incredible character. And if you just make her, a skinny, attractive, woman, it doesn't work. There's none of the the force of will just vanishes from that point, and she's just like every other character that you see in a comic. You know, I'm just here because I am. You know, this is my role in the comic, not, you know, I got there by hard work. Yeah.
Mr. Hicks, I would like to shake your hand. That's the same thing I've been saying for at least the last 6 years since they brought out the skinny Amanda Waller. I've been having that same argument with everybody. It's just she just isn't the same character. Because again, the skinny Amanda Waller that you see nowadays in the New 52, you have I don't know, she doesn't have that same presence as the Wall does.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder, when does she get to the top? You know, is her intelligence? Does she sleep way to the top?
And even the nickname doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. And with this
she is physically a wall as well as being a force of will.
Exactly. Like I said, with the pre-New 52 Amanda Waller, you can tell how she got where she is just, again, by her mere force of presence and force of will.
Yeah, definitely.
Glad to hear someone else say the same thing I've been saying for years now. So kind of helps me validate myself, and I need that sometimes. But moving on from the Wall, the next page 10, we got the top panel here. They're all, he can't be serious. I think he's serious. He's serious? Just amazed that Batman wants to go into Russia again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's classic JLI shtick right there, isn't it?
Yeah. Batman's, still, Nemesis is not a villain. He's certainly not a spy.
Yeah. And on the next page, I love when the JLI blast off. Like, you can see the cave sort of opening with the hydraulics, a little bit of hydraulic leg there holding it open.
Right.
There's just a great big, plume of smoke coming from the back of the jet. There's a flash of light, and you can't see any other tech at all. Like, it's just such a shorthand. Like, most artists would say, okay, I've got to draw, the Beetle rocketing away, is it even the Beetle?
I think it's the Bug.
Yeah, the Bug. I need to show that rocketing away. I'll draw the Bug in great detail. It's just it's all smoke and light and nothing else. And then you're inside it and just looking at the interior and the conversations in there. So it's not flashy, the art, is it?
No, it's not. And I don't think, like I said, the way they do it, I don't think you need the flashy. Like you're saying, it gets the point across very, without going into all the detail. You get the point across that, they're in a hurry, they're taking off. You don't need to see all that detail of the Bug at this point.
Yeah, it's so efficient.
Yeah.
Art-wise.
And on the same page where they're talking Beetle and Miracle and Booster Gold's talking about why would an American team of supervillains attack a Soviet prison, and Beetle's all, maybe Batman paid him to do it? She's like, I wouldn't say that too loud. And then down to the bottom of the page, Black Canary's talking to Batman. He's like, you mean you didn't pay those supervillains? Batman's like, what? Just don't get upset.
So it's almost a Darth Vader. What? What?
Do you have any other comments on this issue at this point?
It's a bit of getting all the pieces in place issue. We've got everyone converging on the prison, the Rocket Reds, the Red Star, the Army. You've got, and it, ends just about the second last page is the JLI face to face with the Suicide Squad, and you're going, what's going to happen next? It's a real page turner, isn't it?
Yeah. Like I said, I thought this was a great issue. I think pretty similar to everything about this issue. Like I say, it leads into the next issue quite well. I do want to say I do like the fact that this version of the Guy Gardner, where he's very much the naive and sweet Guy Gardner at this point because of the bump on the head.
Yeah. And they run with that for a few more issues, I think. It doesn't clear up till about issue 17, I think, of JLI.
Yeah, 17 or 18. Yeah, the one where I started at when he fights Lobo.
Yeah.
But that's for another podcast.
It is.
And we're going to take a real quick break. I don't know how quick, but we're going to take a break. We're going to listen to some more promos for some other podcasting friends. And we'll be right back with the second part of the Justice League Suicide Squad crossover. Hold tight.
Now we're gonna have a break. Message time we're gonna take.
Doom Patrol.
1963.
Doom Patrol debut.
My Greatest Adventure, issue 80. 1964.
My Greatest Adventure renamed Doom Patrol.
Issue 85. 1968.
Doom Patrol Destroyed.
Issue 121. 1976.
The New Doom Patrol.
Showcase 94. 1987.
Doom Patrol Volume 2.
Kupperberg Lytle. 1989.
Morrison and Case.
Issue 19. 1993.
Pollack.
Issue 64. 2001.
Doom Patrol Volume 3.
Arkudi Hewitt. 2004.
Doom Patrol Volume 4.
Burn.
Shush.
2009.
Doom Patrol Volume 5.
Giffen Clark. 2012. 2013. 2014. 2015. 2016.
Waiting for Doom, the Doom Patrol podcast, because we're waiting.
Available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Podbean.com.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pat, and I'm the host of a new podcast called The Longbox Crusade. A while back, my wife said to me, "Why do you keep buying more comics? I bet you have not even read all the comics you have already." Well, she's right, but let's keep that between you and me. So I took her up on the challenge to read them all. I decided to read my collection of comic books in chronological order by the issue's cover dates. I wanted to relive their adventures and bring back the memories I had of my childhood in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. My collection has been stashed away in over 20-plus long boxes in the basement. I'll leave it up to your imagination as to why I cannot have them on display upstairs, but that's a different story. The Longbox Crusade podcast will be of recaps and reviews of the issues in my collection in a fun and friendly way. You can find the podcast at longboxcrusade.com. I hope you will join me on this crusade to read them all.
Now we go back to the fun. Message time is over and done.
Let's go ahead and go to the Suicide Squad, issue 13. The title of this one is Battle Lines. The cover date was May of 1988. The on-sale date was February the 2nd, 1988, almost 1 month after the Justice League International issue. The cover price was 75 cents. Editor was Robert Greenberger. The writer John Ostrander. Penciler Luke McDonnell. Inker Robert Lewis. Letter Todd Klein. Colorist Carl Gafford. And the cover was done by Steve Liloa and Al Gordon. And this was reprinted along with the last issue in Justice League International Volume 2 hardcover and then a trade paperback. The synopsis, this story starts where the last one ended. The JLI facing off with the Suicide Squad. While they're getting ready to square off, Dimitri, a.k.a. Rocket Red, receives a transmission that the People's Heroes, Red Star, and a squadron of Rocket Reds are on the way. Meanwhile, Duchess appears to recognize Mr. Miracle from somewhere and wants to pummel him. Blue Beetle tries protecting Scott and faces Duchess's wrath. Batman tells Deadshot to shoot him, unless he's going to pull his punches again, then don't bother. Deadshot tells him go to hell and walks away. Vixen and John have a conversation about her and her old Justice League teammates, which ends in a hug. Captain Boomerang takes on Guy Gardner, again as we talked about previously, who's the new improved nice guy. The guy stays in a protective bubble, letting Captain Boomerang tire himself out. Captain Atom and Nightshade meet up and say they'll fake it until they can figure things out. They get a little talking about their romance and their history. Rick and Batman meet up. Batman tells him that if Nemesis is working with the squad, he must not be the hero he thought he was, and maybe he deserves to be in prison. Then the two of them start fighting. Deadshot and Mr. Miracle end up pairing off and they fight. Black Canary and Bronze Tiger, they end up squaring off. Meanwhile, Dimitri talks to Tom, a.k.a. Nemesis, to get his side of the story. Javelin and Booster, they fight. Back in the States, Amanda Waller and Maxwell Lord talk about their teams, the current mission. Max wants to expose the squad, basically just to help the Justice League's image. Back at the prison, the fighting continues, for the most part. Captain Atom and Nightshade are fooling around, while John and Mari continue their heart-to-heart about her recent adventures with the squad. Rocket Red tells John that if Chester stays, he's going to be killed. At this point, the Justice League realizes they need to work with the squad. The two teams call a truce, and they eventually find Batman and Rick fighting. They are eventually able to separate the two men, where Rick collapses and Batman just walks away. Nightshade opens a portal, which allows the Suicide Squad to escape. The Justice League confronts the Russian groups and tells them that they are taking Chester to their embassy for safekeeping. Meanwhile, back in America, Frustrated with the League and their antics, Batman quits. Back in Bel Rev, Flag is checked into the infirmary, while Boomerang tells us that the Wall is going to be kicking their butts right and left over this mess. The end. So, a quick little synopsis there. Again, we got the cover, as we talked about just a few minutes ago. This is a reverse almost of the previous cover. Do you have any different thoughts on this issue, on this cover?
I like the reversal of Guy Gardner because he just looks very like you often see Guy smiling when he fights because he just loves fighting, but in this he just looks peacefully happy.
Yeah, it's a different smile.
It is a different smile for Guy.
A cheerful smile, which you don't see on Guy very often.
Yeah, and Batman coming in for a punch on Rick Flag and Miracle putting down Boomerang. Yeah, it looks like Deadshot sort of diving away from the Martian Manhunter. Of the two covers, this one's probably marginally better than the other one. What would you say?
I kind of like the other one a little better, mainly just because that you were talking about Deadshot diving away from Martian Manhunter. To me, it looks like he's trying to tackle Javelin the way it's drawn there.
Yeah.
And that kind of throws it off a little bit. But like I said, I like them. They're both decent covers. Again, they could have a little more in the background, but again, I see what they're going for with not quite a reverse, but the opposite angle. So
yeah, and they're both done by Steve Lealoa.
Yes.
So and Al Gordon inks them, but yeah, they go together nicely as a set.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Especially as a set piece, I like them.
Yeah.
And then with this first page where they starts out with the squad battling or facing off against the Justice League. I just want to say that's a very nice shot of the two teams.
Yeah.
And again, since this is a Suicide Squad book, we're getting the back of the squad and we're seeing the Justice League face on.
Yeah. And
I don't know if you started reading the Suicide Squad from the beginning.
Yeah, no, it's a series. I mean, it's one of my favorite series ever. So I've read it when it first came out, and I've reread it many times since. So
Well, my question on this.
So I mean, that's to my mind the best thing about the movie so far, without seeing the movie, is the fact that we're getting new trades of the squad because it's a series I just love. So I'm happy to own it. Double dip and buy it again in trades as well as have the issues in boxes.
Yeah, I've got all the issues, and I'm thinking about picking up the trades. I got the first one. My wife got me for Christmas, so I'm thinking about picking up the other ones. My question is, so if you remember right, it's been quite a while back. Do you know who Duchess was at this point? Do you have any inkling at this point in your life, or?
Yeah, I'd worked out her connection to Apocalypse at this stage. I mean, Lashina was, the obvious choice. I didn't think it was much of a mystery. I mean, it was sort of. I think the squad was ignorant of it just because it was convenient to have such a powerhouse on the team at the time. Yeah, but I think it comes out later that Waller, knows who she is and, is sort of playing chess with her to see, what's her game and, to exploit her in the meantime.
Well, I believe when she got left behind a few issues during the Millennium crossover, in fact.
Right.
When the rest of the Furies were leaving, she got left behind, and that's when she showed up in the Suicide Squad. And so that's why I think it's supposed to be a secret at this point to everybody because, and she seems to have amnesia because she recognizes Mr. Miracle, but she doesn't quite know from where.
Yeah. Well, they had that confrontation back in issue 3, I think, with the female Furies.
Right. Oh, yeah. And then, bottom of page 3 when Batman and Deadshot are, Batman's like, you going to pull your punches again? Yeah, so don't waste your time.
Yeah. Well, that's just a beautiful bit of psychology from Ostrander to say, okay, why did Deadshot, who's a expert marksman, never kill Batman? And it's, because he has so much baggage about his life that he can't kill the man who can beat him. So, And
they explore this later. I think it was in the Deadshot miniseries a few months down the road. They explore that a little bit further.
Yeah, and I think there's a point where Deadshot basically says to Batman, from now on, I'm not going to pull my shots. And, that's quite a way down the track with Suicide Squad, but that's a great moment. But I love all these pairings in these battles. You've got, Javelin and Booster Gold. So he's chucking Javelins at Booster Gold, and Booster's just got his force field who's solving that. Boomerang and Guy Gardner is just classic because, in any other version of Guy Gardner, this would be the worst fight ever because Guy would just be, a nutcase.
Yeah.
But in this, he's just playing the pacifist, like he's sitting in a green bubble while Boomerang just wears himself out trying to get into it.
Oh, he's be careful, you don't want to hurt yourself.
Yeah, and some questionable Australian colloquialisms here, like droob. I don't think I've ever heard an Australian say droob. Anyway.
I was curious about Boomerang, how accurate his speak is to what the average Australian,
He's very, like you've got, he's a caricature of an Australian accent, basically. He's very, very broad. Like, you can find people who say some of these things, but they don't say all of them in the one sentence.
That's why I always assumed that he was kind of a character, kind of an American-looking Australians.
Yeah, I mean, the further away you head from the cities in Australia, you'll find people who talk like, oh, you flaming drongo, you dingo mongrel. You'll hear talk like that. But, he's a very exaggerated version of all that. So, I mean, the Suicide Squad issue where we go to Australia and see his background is full of terrible cliches. that one issue 44 that comes up in a few years for you with your podcast, I'd say.
Yeah, it'll be a while down the road.
Yeah.
While we're here real quick, on page 4, as I mentioned, I like that dialogue between Vixen and Johns as they're talking about the Justice League, and she was a member of the joke Justice League.
The Detroit one, yeah, they've got history with everything that went wrong with that version of the league.
So I got to wonder, she calls it the Joke League of America. I wonder if that's kind of a little bit of a meta comment, seeing how most fans didn't care for that version of the Justice League. I personally liked it, but again, I bought it in back issue. I didn't buy it when it was coming out. But I liked the Detroit League myself. I thought they were interesting and, again, a bit stereotypical for the characters they had.
I've never read much of them. I've only read the story where they all come undone and everyone dies. I borrowed that from someone who read that once, but I've never owned them and I've never seen the start or the formation of that team. So, I mean, I have sort of a post-crisis line where, that's my version of everything. And so certainly JLI was my first Justice League. I didn't really go backwards that much. I mean, I've picked up some of the Earth 2, Earth 1 crossovers with the Justice League and the JSA, but apart from that, not really explored too much of their history.
Right. I picked up his back issue. I had a box of comics I got from some guy, and they had a bunch of these Justice League Detroit issues in there, and then I bought the ones you were talking about, the last 4 or 5 issues where the team dissolved and half of them died.
Yeah.
And then on page 5, you got Captain Atom and Nightshade talking, kind of, because again, they have a past together. When Nightshade started back at Charlton, she appeared in Captain Atom's comics.
Yeah, it's like a Charlton reunion here.
So yeah, they're kind of...
They've been together, though, in the Captain Atom book around this time as well.
And like I say, we'll get more of Nightshade in the Secret Origins comic, which comes out... I think it came out the month after this one, or this same month, or somewhere in this time frame. Where they did the Secret Origins of Nightshade, which me and Ryan talked about a couple months ago on the Secret Origins podcast.
Yeah. And, of course, Luke McDonald was the artist on those Justice League issues that ended out the previous run.
Oh, I forgot about that. You're right, yeah. Which makes perfect sense that, he's doing this artwork with them talking, so...
He's very comfortable with doing them.
Yeah.
These characters.
And again, everything, all the fights and all, everything going on in this issue, I like this little talk between Murray and John's the best, I think. Because again, it's very heartfelt when all this battling's going on.
It's got emotion and history behind it, so it's a talk that makes sense, particularly in this conflict.
And then there's Batman and Flag fighting. They start talking, and Batman telling them, that if Nemesis is working with these guys, he's not the hero that I thought he was. I like how one issue Batman, saying he's a great hero and he's not a spy, and then when he finds out he's working with the Suicide Squad, he's like does a complete 180. He's like, maybe he's not the hero I thought he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we go along, so we have the battle fight between all of them. I think I like the fights. I like on the bottom of page 7, Black Canary's kind of summing things up that, she saw Flag and Boomerang and Deadshot working together when they went after Firestorm back in the Firestorm Manual number 5, which me and Shag talked about some time ago. And then Nightshade's supposed to be a good guy, Vixen. So she's wondering why all these heroes are working with all these villains.
Yeah.
Trying to get Bronze Tiger, to let her know what's going on. He's like, I can't explain it. They're going to have to fight. And again, they say we go along, and do you have any other thoughts on this issue? Anything that jumps out at you?
The real losers in all this is sort of Russian autonomy and sovereignty, because basically everyone is just, they steal Nemesis out of there and cover it up. So, the Russians played for fools in this pretty well.
Yeah. Well, they said that the first issue and the first part of this issue showing, the Red Star, the Rocket Reds, and the People's Heroes coming to stop the Suicide Squad. And they get there at the very end of the issue, and after everything's all done, the squad's already fled. And, like you said, the March Manhunter's just like, we're taking them. Nothing you can do about it. Sorry.
So, yeah. And the other thing that strikes me is, of all the fights that go on in this issue, the only one that's really serious is Flag and Batman. They really go for it between the two of them.
Yeah.
And at one point, Batman's the ear on one of his cowl gets busted off.
Yeah.
And there's the bit at the end where Beetle's picked it up and gives it back to Batman. It's just a weird thing to happen. You don't think of Batman's costume getting damaged in that way. I mean, you think of cool rips and tattered cloaks, capes, but
right.
Never busted ears off his cowl.
Yeah.
And Flag is in such a bad way at the end of this fight. I mean, I think he's in recovery in the next issue. I think he's not even up and walking around the next time.
Yeah, the next issue, if I'm not mistaken, he's still unconscious from this battle.
Yeah. So Batman delivers a brutal beating.
Yeah. Well, one thing I thought was kind of odd in here on this page 21, we're talking about, Booster has Batman's little earpiece. Batman quits this Justice League in the Suicide Squad comic.
Yes.
I thought that was an odd place for it. I mean, I understand why it's here because, I'm sure if you're reading the Justice League, you're picking up this book for the continuation of the story. So you're going to see that, but I just thought it was kind of odd that Batman loses it and he quits during the Suicide Squad comic.
Yeah, but interestingly, even though he quits the JLI, he's still around. He pops up over and over again in that comic. So, he sort of falls back to reserve status, but they use him in several issues straight afterwards. So it's even though he quits, he's not really gone. So, which I thought was really odd. I mean, I've been rereading JLI quite recently, so it really struck me that, this is where Batman quits. And then it's there he is in 2 issues down the line. Oh, here he is again. Oh, at which point does he actually quit? So, yeah, it doesn't really stick. I mean, I think as a character, he was too useful in the book, with his sneaky mind, so they sort of use it. And particularly when Beetle's brainwashed, if you remember that arc.
Yes.
When, so, I mean, Batman's a big player in that one as well. So,
yeah.
But it's a terrific issue. I mean, it really wraps the story up well. It gets the Suicide Squad back together with Nemesis. And, Batman is... I mean, I think he's kind of disgusted that he sort of has to compromise himself to work with the Suicide Squad, and it's. But he sort of backs off from bothering Waller after this. I mean, after the great issue 10, where he's wanting to know what's going on. Now he sort of knows what's going on, and he sort of has to live with it. So.
Right, and I say he was. I like in here. He tells he tells Flag when they're fighting, "Well, I promised I was going to find a way to bring you guys down. And this is it." But they're able to get Nemesis out, and so he has no proof at this point of the squad or their existence or anything. So it's still kind of, for being Batman and being, infallible, it kind of, puts a crimp in his plan and stops him from doing what he wants to do.
Yeah, well, he has to live with it, basically, and there's nothing he can do.
Pretty much, but... Well, again, I enjoyed that little crossover. I thought it was a great crossover. Do you have any other thoughts on that crossover overall?
Just it's very well integrated. There's no, I mean, most a lot of the times when you see a crossover between two series, there's something little that they've got wrong. There's a little bit of continuity that's a speed bump for your mind when you get through it. This is very seamless. They actually read like two consecutive issues of the same comic rather than, two different titles coming together. So it's beautifully done. And the JLI are the JLI. There's no, misinterpretation of them, and the Suicide Squad are the Suicide Squad. They're true to their own selves in both of these crossovers. So it works really well. I mean, it's an odd pairing. Like, you wouldn't think this would be, a crossover that makes much sense. You've got a very dark, sneaky, ruthless team, and then you've got this, wisecracking, bright, heroic team. And so putting them together, it actually works really well. Like I said at the beginning, it's two great tastes that go well together. But it's not immediately obvious. I can think of several other crossovers that would have made more sense at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiments completely.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's late, so you got things you got. Well, it's late for me. It's not quite as late for you. I know you got things to do. So why don't you tell everyone where they can find you at on the internet. I'll let you slip out of here.
Sure. Well, I'm on Twitter at reading_Hicks, which is spelled Hix. If you've ever seen a picture on Twitter of a koala getting punched in the face, that's my avatar on Twitter. And of course, we've got the Waiting for Doom podcast, which is on Podbean and iTunes and all the usual places like that, just like your podcast is, no doubt. That's all I've got going on at the moment, for now. I'm thinking about other stuff, but yeah, that's all I'm doing right now. So, yeah, but if you any interest in the Doom Patrol, come along. We do a very, it's quite an irreverent podcast, and it's not dry. We try to keep it, moving and snappy, and we make a lot of fun of the Doom Patrol in all areas, as well as celebrating them. So, we're not haters. So there's no area of the Doom Patrol that we hate. But we'll find the best fun in every part of it. So that's what we're trying to do.
Right on. Well, again, thank you very much for taking time out of your day and talking with me about this issue, or these issues.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I'm actually a little jealous that you're the one doing the Suicide Squad podcast, because I've got a real soft spot for this team.
Well, maybe we can work things out and get you back on again, because I enjoy talking with you. I know
no worries.
The time difference is a little hard, but we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, well, you could always move to Australia.
There is that. I've got a buddy that's a big fan of Australia, so he'd probably like me to move over there. So I don't think my family would like it, but we'll see. All right, Paul. Well, again, I'll let you get going. I appreciate you talking with me, and again, thanks for being here.
No worries.
Have a nice day.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thanks. Just see ya.
And at this point, we're done talking about the issues. We're going to move directly on to our next character profile. I'm not going to take a break. We're just going to go directly on to the character profile of Javelin. Not much to know about Javelin, from what I can see. This has come from Wikipedia. They don't have his real name or any information like that on there like they normally do. All it says is the man who became Javelin was an Olympics athlete who, for unknown reasons, became a criminal. Using his talent, he created an unusual arsenal of weapons based on spears. Javelin hired a gang of thugs and became a mercenary. First encounter of Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. Javelin stole a prototype jet-powered solar Ferris aircraft and defeated the Green Lantern with its various missiles. He was captured, however, when he tried to blow up Ferris aircraft. Later, he agreed to serve in the Suicide Squad in exchange for the acquittal of his crimes, which we just saw this issue. And that's all I have on Javelin. And again, quickly moving on to our next segment, we're going to move on to Suicide Notes. We're going to go ahead over to the Facebook. And these are the people that liked or commented or shared our links and what have you. We're going to go ahead and start with Ruth Sutherland. They're over on the Trucker Talk and Warlord podcasts. My buddy Ryan Daly, who's got his own Secret Origins podcast, Give Me Those Star Wars, Black Canary, plus he's over on my G.I. Joe podcast with me. And his Secret Origins podcast, they liked photos that we had on the page. Our online friend Justin Francoeur, if I'm not mispronouncing that, he runs DC Comics in the 80s. A great site, you should check it out. David Foster, Gabriel Tom Plattis, Gene Hendricks, and Keith G. Baker. And then over on Twitter, we had Willie Yarborough and Willie Yarborough. Yeah, Willie's the only one that made any comments on Twitter. He tweeted to the Headcast Network, which is the Headcast Network, talking about the Amanda Waller. DC Comics is in the middle of doing their rebirth. And Willie commented over there that he hopes that she gets back to her roots in DC Rebirth. I know she's getting her old look back. So happy. And again, Willie's talking about Amanda Waller. In the New 52, she was a younger, skinnier supermodel Waller. You probably know this because I've been complaining about it ever since. It looks like she's going back to the thicker, heavier set Amanda that we all love and care about. So thanks, Willie, for a heads up on that and for your comments and your tweets on that. Appreciate it. And it looks like that's about it for tweets. So again, we don't have any letters, don't have any comments or anything. So we're going to end the suicide notes there. And then we're going to move on to our next issue box. First, I'm going to do a little promo for other sites and shows. The Fire and Water Network podcast, they have a Who's Who podcast. Last issue, they had quite a bit of stuff that showed up in my podcast. This next episode that just dropped, I believe, actually, they're going to be talking about Amanda Waller. Definitely check out the Who's Who podcast. And then just a couple other shout-outs real quick. Again, check out, I played the promo earlier for the Longbox Crusade. That's a new online buddy of mine, Pat Sampson, who started his own podcast. I've listened to the first couple episodes. It's a great show. Check it out. And then you got my regular shows. Again, this is a bit late, so I'm dropping this within a couple of days or so. I should be dropping the next episode of G.I. Joe, Real American Headcast, where myself, Ryan, Kyle, and Adam, we take a look at G.I. Joe issue 11 and the 4th episode of The Revenge of Cobra, the second miniseries. The week after that, check out Headspeaks, where I talk about something comic-related more than likely. Soon, maybe next episode, I'm not sure. I'm going to start talking about and covering the Power of the Atom and the Sword of the Atom series, the miniseries. Good stuff. Check that out. And then check us out the 3rd week of July, knock on wood, hopefully everything works out right, when we get the 2nd anniversary, the 24th episode of Task Force X. I'll have a special guest star or two on that, at least one I know of. Maybe more if I can arrange it, who knows. And then the week after that, join us for the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour. I just dropped the latest issue of that, and I made an announcement that I may stop doing that podcast just because of time. We'll see. But anyways, next month here on Task Force X, as I said previously, there will be no checkmate next month. I'm going to have Ryan Daly, and we're going to be talking about issues 14, 15, and 16 of the Suicide Squad, which is the Nightshade Odyssey. But before you do that, go back and look for Ryan's Secret Origins podcast. I believe it was episode 27 or 28, somewhere in there. I want to say 28. The Secret Origins podcast, where they had the Secret Origin of Nightshade. That's kind of a prequel to the next three issues. I'm not going to talk about it again because I just talked about it recently with Ryan. So go back. It's been about a month or two ago. Go back and look for Secret Origins of Nightshade. It was an episode with Nightshade and Midnight. I want to say it was episode 28, if I'm not mistaken. Well, go listen to me, Ryan, talk about Nightshade's Secret Origin, and that'll lead into next month's Task Force X. But until then, I guess that'll do it for me for this month. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for listening in. Feel free to let me know what you guys think. Again, you can send me an email to taskforcex@headspeaks.com. I enjoy looking forward to hearing from you guys, reading your letters. Let me know your thoughts on this issue, on this episode, what you guys think, whether you like it or don't. I want to know. You can also visit us at the blog, which is at taskforcex.headspeaks.com. You can leave your messages there. You can go to the Google Plus page or the Facebook page. Just look for Task Force X on both of those. You can send us a tweet at Headcast Network. Again, you send us a tweet at Headcast Network, and we'll get it through there. Make sure you tag Suicide Squad or Task Force X in the tweet so I help catch my attention. But I guess that's going to do it for this episode. So I guess until next month, squad mates, Dismissed.
Thank you for listening to another great episode of Task Force X. I can also be found rambling on my main headcast of Head Speaks, where I rant and rave about movies, comics, geek stuff, and whatever is bugging me.
Mate, you just out-crazied the Joker.
Well, I tried, Boomer, but anyways, my home on the internet is at headspeaks.com. HEADSPEAKS.com. Links to my blog, which contain follow-up information to this and every headcast, can be found there. Both Task Force X and Headspeaks are on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at headspeaks.com under Headcasts. Please feel free to email me any questions, comments, or concerns to taskforcex@headspeaks.com. And if you want to record a message, you can send it to me at taskforcex@headspeaks.com, and I'll play it on the air. I'm also on Facebook at Task Force X, and also on Google+, you can look for Task Force X under People and Pages. All titles and characters discussed are owned and copyrighted by DC Comics. I claim no ownership to the Suicide Squad, Checkmate, or Task Force X. I'm just a big fan wanting to spread the Task Force X love with everyone else. DC Comics can be found on the web at dccomics.com. Be sure to visit your local comic shop and look for Suicide Squad and Checkmate Comics. And while you're there, see what else they have that may interest you.
Mother.
Well, make sure you join us here next time for another fun-filled headcast from your friendly neighborhood Brotherhead. In the meantime, I'll see you in the funny pages.
Just talk about. That's one reason why I didn't want to come on this episode, because we're going to be talking about it here in 8, 9, 10 months, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, so this is a good dress rehearsal for that.
Yes. And again, I'm sure Shag's going to say it, but she is hot.
Traveling in a fighter combi on a hippie trailhead full of zombies. I met a strange lady, she made me nervous. She took me in and gave me breakfast. And she said, do you come from a land down under, where women go and men wonder? Can't you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover. Buying bread from a man in Brussels. He was 6